Discover the incredible transformation. How 30 minutes changed. The way I thought about family. Jack leaned back in the worn leather booth at Rosie's diner, the warmth of the coffee cup barely reaching the cold corners of his heart. Around him, laughter echoed. Tales spun like silk threads weaving a tapestry of connection. But he felt a chasm gaping wide between him and everything familiar. He let the diner's ambiance wash over him, yet all he could think of was the tightening knot in his stomach, the miles he felt from his teenage daughter, Emma. He was a dedicated mechanic in a town where everyone knew each other, but deep down, he felt like a ghost, haunting his own life. The two elderly men at the counter caught his attention, their voices low but animated as they shared stories about their families, stories imbued with warmth and wisdom. Jack sat up, drawn in by their camaraderie. But as he listened, he couldn't help but picture Emma's distant gaze, the way she closed herself off behind a wall he built with long hours and missed moments. The guilt hung heavy within him, an anchor pulling him beneath a sea of regret. Why did he prioritize work over family? Did he confuse dedication with love? A flicker of determination ignited, and he felt the pressure building within his chest. He questioned if he could turn page in this chapter of his life. Emma was slipping away, drowning in her own world of teenage turmoil while he fought tirelessly at his shop. Jack knew he was providing for her, but something vital was missing. Was it already too late to turn things around? The weight of that thought squeezed his heart, and he struggled to breathe. Then a sudden crash erupted, shattering his swirl of thoughts. A car careened into the lot, and voices rose in chaos as two drivers clashed, an argument igniting like dry grass in sun-drenched fields. Instinct kicked in, grounding him. He leaped from his booth, adrenaline rushing through his veins, momentarily stealing the attention from the aches of his fatherhood. As he pushed outside, he wished Emma could see him not just as a provider, but as a protector, as a father. The crowd began to settle down, yet inside him, the storm raged on. Returning to his thoughts of Emma, he recalled their last family dinner, where he had tried so hard to engage her, only to be met with cold indifference. The desperation twisted in his gut. Could he ever break that barrier again? He wanted to connect, to become an anchor for her. But all his attempts felt like stumbling over a chasm. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each moment that passed felt weighted with regret and longing. A father who thought work equated to love. A daughter drowning in her isolation. Just when he thought they might be lost to each other forever, a call shattered the night air, breaking the silence of their estrangement. Emma's voice trembled on the phone, revealing a crisis at school, words tumbling out like the pieces of his heart. As Jack raced through the biting night to her side, he knew he stood at a crossroads. This could be the turning point he had so desperately hoped for, or it could drive them further apart, locking them both in a silent prison of unspoken truths. The tension hung thick in the air, as he wondered if he could finally bridge the divide that had grown ever wider. The streets glistened under the streetlights like an empty stage awaiting a performance. But for Jack, it felt more like a maze, fraught with uncertainty. His mind raced while his heart beat a frantic rhythm of hope and dread. Pulling into the school parking lot, he felt a sickening whirl of emotions twisting inside him. This was not the father he wanted to be. He had spent too long being absent when she needed him most. It didn't take long to find Emma. She sat on the cold steps leading to the school's entrance, her head bowed as though she bore the weight of the world. The sight struck him with the force of a hammer, a poignant reminder of just how far apart they had grown, Yet the realization sent a surge of determination coursing through him. "Emma?" He breathed, almost choking on the word as he approached her. Her eyes flicked up, an expression mixed with surprise and wariness. She quickly hid her face behind a curtain of auburn hair, shielding herself from the world. In that moment, every instinct told him to retreat, to shield himself from the hurtful barrier she'd built. But he forced himself to stay rooted. "Dad," she said quietly, devoid of warmth, her guarded tone slicing through him. "I'm here," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "What happened? Talk to me." Her silence was a deafening roar, leaving the air heavy. But inside, Jack felt a flicker of resolve ignite again. He refused to let her isolation define their relationship. Instead of leaping to the rescue or offering uninvited opinions, his instinct when pulling a car apart, he needed to be present. He sat beside her on the steps, maintaining a respectful distance. He sought to meet her where she was, however alien that felt. She glanced sideways, struggling to find words, and in that awkward silence, Jack seized the moment. "You know, things aren't always easy for us adults either. I've made mistakes, Emma." There, laid bare, were his vulnerabilities. Words he had never spoken aloud before. The emotion in his voice caught her off guard. For the first time in a long while she looked at him. Truly looked, her eyes searching for something. He felt raw, exposed, but it was no longer about him. It was about her. "I thought that you didn't care," Emma finally said, her voice cracked with the weight of 1,000 silenced protests. Jack's heart sank, yet he felt a surge of clarity. "I thought I was being a good dad by working hard, but what I didn't realize was that I was missing being a part of your life. I want to change that. I don't want a wall between us anymore." Her expression softened, if only slightly, and Jack felt a glimmer of hope flicker to life. Perhaps this was the beginning of their connection being reforged. Yet, beneath the surface, Jack wrestled with self-doubt. Was a single conversation enough to dissolve years of distance? Memories of missed soccer games and forgotten movie nights loomed like shadows behind him. "Why should I believe you, Dad?" Emma questioned, her vulnerability emerging like a timid bloom in hostility. The sting spoke volumes. He had to earn her trust anew. She wasn't looking for hollow promises, but for action. "I'll show you," Jack vowed, feeling the weight of the promise cling to him like the damp night air. The only way to heal their rift was through more than words. It would take time, patience, and perhaps sacrifices he had yet to fully comprehend. As they sat together beneath the dim light, surrounded by the vast quiet of the night, Jack's thoughts shifted from despair to strategy. How would he rebuild his role as her father? What steps would he need to take to mend the trust that had faded like the twilight around them? A thought pierced through the chaos. The weekend was coming. Maybe they could start fresh, find a way to enjoy each other's company again. But then another fear gripped him. What if she rejected his offer? What if this moment did nothing to heal the wounds? Jack glanced at Emma, her expression unreadable. The moment hung in the balance, a taut elastic band ready to snap. Yet between them, the spark of possibility ignited a new path. Just as he was about to speak again, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from his boss, reminding him of a crucial work obligation that conflicted with his tentative plans to reconnect with Emma. The decision loomed, and he could almost taste the bitter regret threatening to rise again. Would he choose work, or would he take the leap into a new kind of fatherhood? Jack stared at his phone, the screen illuminated by the harsh glow of his boss's message, a cold reminder of the responsibilities that had often taken precedence over his daughter. Every pulse of the notification seemed to echo his fears. He could feel the choice bearing down on him, a heavy shroud threatening to suffocate any hope he had of reconnecting with Emma. Yet deep down, a voice urged him to look beyond the immediacy of his career obligations. It whispered of growth, of hard choices leading to profound changes. He had spent years working long hours, believing he was doing the right thing by providing for his family. Now, faced with this pivotal moment, he questioned the very foundation of that belief. Was being present worth sacrificing his ambitions? The answer felt abundantly clear, yet the road ahead felt daunting. Emma, he began with cautious resolve. If I have to choose between work and spending time with you, I choose you. This is important. Her eyes flickered with disbelief, perhaps even a hint of fear. Would he truly follow through? She looked away, lost in thought, the silence expanding between them once more. Yet it was different this time. There was an urgency pushing Jack forward. He could not let this moment slip away. He reached out, resting a tentative hand on her knee, the gesture filled with an unspoken promise. Let's find a movie to watch this weekend, something you'd enjoy. We can grab pizza afterward, just the two of us. The response he longed for was not immediate. Instead, Emma turned her gaze back to him, searching his face for sincerity. Jack felt a pang of anxiety tighten in his chest. Could an evening together truly serve as the bridge to bridge years of absence? What if it's just another one of your half-hearted attempts? She asked cautiously, vulnerability threading through her tone. Though it stung, Jack knew it was a fair question. He had made plenty of pledges that had been broken before. I know I have a lot to prove, he admitted, his voice dropping lower. But I want to show you that I can actually be here for you. Not just physically, but mentally too. The sincerity in his voice surprised even him. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to be so completely honest, stripped of pretenses. Okay, Emma finally replied, the weight of her decision hanging visibly in the air. I guess we can try. The flicker of hope had returned, yet it came wrapped in cautious optimism, a reminder of their fractured past. Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He felt the reassurance that came from a shared plan, a tangible step forward. But the internal conflict twisted again. Would this be enough? His head began to whirl with thoughts of how to ensure he could live up to his promise, to transform into the father she could trust. Every choice weighed heavy with history. As they sat in the quiet darkness, Jack combed through memories of missed moments, birthdays, graduations, and everyday laughter. The images igniting a fierce determination to carve new experiences, ones not marred by his past failings. He pulled out his phone again, ready to message his boss back to reject the work obligation. But then, a new text alert ignited another anxiety. It was a picture of a project that he had poured himself into for months. An opportunity that could lead to a promotion. Tension gripped him again as he oscillated between his career and his family. With every passing second, he knew he was aligning himself with a choice that had the potential to redefine his entire existence. As he wrestled with the implications, Jack resolved to create a plan, not only to rebuild trust with Emma, but also to integrate balance into his life. An equilibrium between fatherhood and professional aspirations. But deep down, uncertainty lingered. What if this newfound commitment fell apart just as before? What would that mean for them? Just as Jack leaned into the possibility of creating a new path with Emma, his phone vibrated again, abruptly interrupting the fragile peace. The message was even more pressing, demanding an immediate response. The pressure skyrocketed, and Jack could feel the familiar churn of anxiety rising. Could he truly manage the delicate balance of being both a devoted father and a dedicated professional? The uncertainty loomed large, and now the stakes felt painfully real, pushing him toward a moment of reckoning. With a clenched jaw, he took a deep breath, ready to respond. Just then, Emma's voice broke the silence. Dad, are you ready to actually be there for me? Because I really need you to be. It was the moment Jack had prepared for, yet the weight of those words struck him harder than he expected. This was more than a question. It was a challenge that would test every fiber of his commitment. Jack nodded slowly, a resolve ignited within him. But faced with this new pressure, he felt the first inklings of dread creeping in. Would he muster the strength to rise to the occasion? Or would he fall prey to his old habits once more? The moment of truth had come, and Jack knew that every decision in the days to come would shape not only his relationship with Emma, but his identity as a father forever. Jack's phone sat heavy in his hand, the bright screen reflecting a tumult of swirling emotions. He felt the weight of his past failures, pressing like an anchor as he contemplated his response. Each moment spent in indecision gnawed at him, accompanied by the undeniable realization that a choice, once made, would carve out the pathway of his future. He had always believed that hard work would shield him from inadequacies, that success would somehow make up for the hours lost with Emma. Yet now, standing at this crossroads, he could see the cracks were deeper than he'd ever acknowledged. The ambitions he had chased were placeholders, substitutes for authentic engagement with his daughter. I need to take this seriously, he thought, his mind racing. Jack could feel Emma's gaze, piercing through his facade, demanding authenticity. A moment of clarity settled in him, a determination to not just communicate with her, but to transform their bond. This wouldn't be another false promise. It needed to evolve into a new standard. With resolve stealing his mind, he finally composed a text to his boss, each word a step towards redefinition. He articulated his refusal to accept the late-night demands that had held him captive for too long. The message felt liberating, shedding a layer of burden he didn't realize he had been carrying. As he pressed send, adrenaline coursed through him. He wasn't just rejecting a work obligation. He was embracing the opportunity for change. He fully understood the stakes but felt emboldened by a burgeoning sense of agency over his life. "Okay, Dad, what's the plan?" Emma's voice interrupted his thoughts, pulling him from his introspection. The hesitance in her tone promised hope, but also warned him of the pressure that lay ahead. Jack looked into her eyes, a fusion of curiosity and guardedness reflecting back at him, and he felt the urge to map out their future plans. "Let's start small," he said, thinking on his feet. "How about we create a Dad and Emma night every weekend? Just us. No distractions. Just time to talk. Or watch whatever you want." He could feel the energy shift in the air as he spoke, seizing the opportunity to lay the foundation of trust. Emma's expression softened, momentarily caught off guard by his sudden initiative. "You mean it?" she asked, her voice a fragile blend of hope and skepticism. "Yes, I mean it. This is our time to do whatever you want. I want to hear you. I want to be there. No work, no distractions. Just us." The steadiness in his voice helped to turn her uncertainty into cautious optimism. As Emma contemplated his proposal, Jack experienced a profound awakening within himself. He didn't just want to be there. He needed to rebuild that distance their relationship had suffered. He saw the opportunity before him as foundational, not merely a project or an obligation, but a chance to mend the fabric of their connection. He began mapping out milestones in his mind, activities they could engage in that would foster communication and build trust, aiming to craft various experiences to revitalize their relationship. Not only did this endeavor have personal significance, but it also required him to challenge long-held beliefs about success and validation. However, doubt crept in uninvited. As he mentally sketched out plans, there lingered a nagging fear that any misstep could return them to this fractured state. Would a few weekends be enough to truly rebuild what had been lost? The thought doused his enthusiasm momentarily, but ignited a curiosity instead. "What else can we do?" he mused aloud, wrestling with the uncertainty. "We could also work on a project together, something creative. What do you think?" Emma perked up. Like a scrapbook, we could collect our memories. The brightness in her voice felt like a small victory, another piece of hope added to a fragile foundation. For the first time in a while, Jack felt the exhilaration of possibility. Embracing that fledgling idea, he beamed at Emma. "That's brilliant. We can start gathering photos and write down our favorite memories." As they spoke, Jack felt a warmth reignite in his chest, a spark that he thought had extinguished. Yet within that warmth, turbulent thoughts still swirled. How would he handle the inevitable challenges that came from reopening those channels? What would he do when feelings of inadequacy resurfaced? When the pull of professional obligations beckoned temptingly once again? He caught Emma's eye, her expression bright, radiating cautious enthusiasm. It solidified the hope that slowly began to flourish within him. The plans they were formulating felt rich with promise. Yet Jack knew that the real work lay in remaining steadfast amidst the trials that lay ahead. The moment held promise. Yet Jack felt as though they stood atop a precipice, looking down into uncertainties that waited below. Resolute, he nodded to himself, realizing he would have to face these concerns head-on. "Dad," Emma interrupted his thoughts again. "Will you really be there? I mean, really?" Jack inhaled deeply, the weight of his promise settling firmly on his shoulders. The answer loomed large in his mind, and for once, he felt ready. Not just to say it, but to be accountable for every moment. "I will," he said, voice firm, feeling a shift within. "I can." But as the waves of confidence washed over him, so too did a chilling reminder of the work that the road ahead demanded. What if those same doubts, those same demanding forces at work sought to pull him away? Would he have the strength to stand firm when challenged by both personal and professional responsibilities? Jack's phone vibrated again, but this time he was not ready for its message. It interrupted the fragile tension that had built between him and Emma, signaling that the real test of his resolve loomed on the horizon. And so, as he prepared to face another message demanding his attention, he felt unmoored, yet invigorated. And that's when the greatest challenge awaited him. The message flashed across Jack's screen, beckoning him back to the frantic pace of work he had momentarily escaped. The vibrancy of the moment shared between him and Emma dimmed, the simple joy cast into shadow by a new demand on his attention. His heart raced, a conflicting pulse pounding in his chest as he hesitated, fingers hovering uncertainly over the device. "Just a second," he whispered to Emma, though he knew she could see the flicker of indecision etched across his face. The anticipation for their Dad and Emma night hung delicately in the air like a horizon before dawn. "What is it?" Emma asked, her curiosity veiled with concern. Sensing the shift in his demeanor, Jack wrestled with the moment. The allure of work tugged at him, a nagging echo of his past choices. But another part, the one that had begun to awaken with optimism, fought back. This was the crux of his transformation, the precise moment where he could either reclaim his commitment to Emma or slide back into the habitual patterns of past failures. Choosing to prioritize their time together felt monumental, yet simultaneously terrifying. Jack took a deep, steadying breath, letting the weight of his decision fill the space around him. The horrors of his old habits loomed, but he could also see a different type of future. A less certain one, but potentially richer. He placed the phone face down, a small act of defiance. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, it's just you and me." Emma's eyes brightened, a cascade of relief washing over her features as the tension in her shoulders melted away. He felt the shift in their dynamic, the promise of something genuine forming in the space between them. This weekend commitment they had established offered a blank canvas where new memories could unfold. As long as he remained vigilant against the distractions that threatened to undermine their connection. "Okay, so what's first? The scrapbook, right?" she asked, almost bouncing on her toes with excitement. "Yes," We can start by gathering pictures from our phones, and maybe you can choose a couple of your favorites from last summer," Jack suggested, his chest fluttering with renewed energy. As they distilled that excitement into plans, he felt reality ground back into his thoughts. The old specters of inadequacy threatened to emerge. Deep down, he questioned if he could keep up this newfound commitment, or whether he would soon return to the familiar territory of neglect. Once again, he found himself grappling with the work-life dichotomy. The demands of being a dedicated father surged against the equally insistent needs of his job. Those thoughts cascaded over him, demanding attention even as he focused on Emma's animated chatter about her favorite moments from summer. Her laughter tethered him to the present, grounding him in this moment of connection. Despite the enjoyable tasks at hand, doubt crept back into Jack's mind. What if he faltered? What if he was found lacking during this intricate stage of rebuilding? He caught himself sliding toward the familiar spiral of overthinking, a place he had vowed to escape. Meeting his own standards would require vigilance, the kind of dedication that spoke not just in words, but in action. Suddenly Emma stood, her resolve matching his. "Let's set rules. Can we put our phones in a box during Dad and Emma nights?" Jack's heart swelled at her suggestion. Already she was engaging in a way he hadn't expected, showing her readiness to foster their bond. "That's brilliant. It'll be our time. No interruptions at all." The gravity of that moment didn't escape him. She was articulating her needs, and he was finally poised to listen. As they gathered supplies, a sense of urgency ignited within him. Jack quickly recognized this was a pivotal moment. He could either settle into the familiar comfort of complacency, or rise to the challenge laid before him. This wasn't simply about time spent. It was about re-educating himself in the fundamentals of presence and connection. They began to sift through pictures. Each one stirred memories and laughter, a gradual expansion of their shared narrative. He noted the ease with which they conversed, bonded not just by shared moments, but by the acknowledgement of their past fractures. Yet, lurking at the corners of his mind was the understanding that these precious memories needed continual nurturance, like fragile seedlings in a storm. As the night unfolded, they fell into an easy rhythm. But Jack couldn't shake the echo of that work message, lingering ominously in his pocket. Would he hold true to his commitment in the face of future temptations? The question loomed, a specter of potential conflict, suspense tightening around the promise he had made. In that instant illuminated by the glow of creativity, he understood this was just the beginning. The path ahead loomed vast and uncertain, filled with both opportunities and the potential for setbacks. How would these choices define him as a father moving forward? As if it was a challenge against the backdrop of their newfound bond, he glanced at Emma, who was lost in the joy of their creative endeavor. Their laughter rang out, yet Jack sensed not just the blissful bond forming, but also the shadow of an unanswered question. A test approaching fast on the horizon. Would he be strong enough to commit fully when the choices inevitably threatened to unravel everything they had just begun to weave? As their laughter mingled with the flares of doubt inside him, Jack felt a chill, and knew his resolve would soon be tested in ways he had not yet imagined. Jack's laughter echoed against the walls of their home, a sound that held both warmth and the biting chill of an unspoken reality. As Emma eagerly flipped through pictures, each image offered a tangible reminder of their shared history. Yet an underlying current of anxiety pulled at him, weaving through the comfort of their laughter. As they pored over shots of summer trips and birthday celebrations, Jack found himself studying Emma's face. The way her eyes sparkled, each smile illuminating the contours of her cheeks. In that moment, he realized these were the memories worth cherishing, the moments that defined their bond. Yet, his commitment to nurturing this connection felt precarious, teetering on the edge of his professional demands. "Dad?" Emma's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back. "Which one do you like better?" She held up 2 photos, one of them at the beach, splashing in the waves, and another from the day she mastered her bike, her expression pure elation. Jack's heart swelled, but as he reached for the bike photo, a familiar itch crept into his mind. The incessant nagging of his work obligations. Just how long could he sustain this brightness when the shadows of emails and deadlines loomed? Both are amazing, he stuttered, forcing a smile as guilt coursed through his veins. The memories could only carry him so far when the weight of unfocused goals urged him to veer back into his old patterns. "Let's keep them both," Emma declared, grinning like the sun emerging from a storm. Jack marveled at her ability to seem so carefree, unaware of the internal struggle fraying at his core. The longer they pieced together their scrapbook, the more Jack felt the familiar duality of his life. On one hand, there was the father who was sitting there, present and filled with love. On the other, the nagging pull of the career he had dedicated himself to, one that beckoned him back relentlessly, threatening to draw him away just when things started to feel right. When they finished the first page, Emma leaned back and evaluated their work with a critical eye. "This looks great, Dad. Like, really great." Jack basked in her admiration, but felt the pang of inadequacy stalking him again. Was it enough? He had fought tooth and nail to reclaim these connections, yet doubt still loomed large. He had to remind himself that rebuilding didn't mean perfection. It meant presence, engagement, and the courage to choose love over ease. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing a good enough job," he murmured, mostly to himself. But Emma had an uncanny way of hearing beneath the surface. "Of course you are," she replied quickly, her innocence imbued with unwavering belief. "You're here with me, right?" Those simple words cracked open something within him, a realization of how simple choices could lead to significant shifts. Just by being there, he was already fulfilling a vital role. A flicker of determination crept back into his consciousness, igniting a fire he had nearly extinguished. They continued their creative endeavor, forging deeper into shared stories. Each turn of the page became an opportunity for connection, transforming not just the physical scrapbook, but also their relationship. Laughter punctuated their work, enveloping them like a warm embrace, banishing the chill of self-doubt. Yet, as his heart lightened, Jack couldn't ignore the reality lying just outside their bubble, a reality he couldn't avoid indefinitely. His phone vibrated, a stark reminder of the demanding world that awaited his attention. The tempting call of work whispered promises of validation, status, success. What if he could do both? Be the devoted father and the ambitious man pursuing his career goals? But in embracing this new perspective, Jack knew he had to take ownership of both roles, rather than let either consume the other. As the night deepened and Emma began to tire, he took his phone and turned it off completely. A bold step, but necessary. "Let's finish the scrapbook tomorrow," he said, determination weaving through his voice. "This is our time, and we'll protect it." Emma yawned and nodded, contentment settling between them. Yet as Jack watched her drift off to sleep, he understood that tomorrow would not be free from temptation or distraction. The test was looming, and he could sense it fast approaching like a storm gathering strength on the horizon. Could he remain steadfast in his commitment when work inevitably called? That question lingered like a specter, rippling through his mind as he quietly absorbed the gravity of his decision. He pondered the path forward. Each choice laid before him like potential stepping stones, but each stone carried the weight of uncertainty. Would he measure up? As he wrestled with his lack of certainty, an undeniable sense began to settle in his gut. He was not just navigating the rocky terrain of fatherhood and career. He was embarking on a vital transformation, one that demanded integrity and resilience. A faint resolve flickered to life. The stakes were high. Tomorrow he would need to confront the choices ahead of him. The moment of truth was closing in fast, and it promised to unravel everything he had just begun to weave between himself and Emma. Would he seize it, or would he let it slip through his fingers? The alarm blared, a cruel herald of dawn slicing through the tranquility of the night. Jack's arm shot out instinctively to silence the unrelenting noise, and he lay there for a moment, feeling the weight of the impending day heavy on his chest. Sleep had offered a brief respite, but now reality encroached, and with it, the cacophony of expectation. He rolled out of bed, determined to carry the momentum from yesterday's small victories into today. He felt the remnants of his revelations vibrate in his mind. Commitment, presence, choice. Yet as he stepped into the shower, the steam enveloping him, doubt crept back in, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. How was he going to maintain this newfound connection when the demands of his job loomed so heavily? Dressed and somewhat refreshed, Jack made his way to the kitchen, where Emma was already seated at the table, a picture of innocence focused on her cereal. He couldn't help but marvel at her, the embodiment of potential and unspoiled joy. As he poured himself coffee, he felt an urgency to seize every moment. He had to create a sense of balance, yet the awareness of an empty inbox loomed like a dark cloud. "Hey, ready for another day?" he asked, trying to inject some levity into the morning. "Yeah. Can we finish the scrapbook today? I like doing it with you," Emma replied, her eyes growing wide with excitement. "A promise," he assured her, the words sparking a flicker of determination. Protecting their time, enforcing those boundaries around their connection. This was just as important as any meeting or deadline his job could demand. As he sipped his coffee, he turned his thoughts inward. Jack reflected on the prior day's creative endeavor. They had made memories a tangible reality. Yet, as his mind drifted, he realized he hadn't yet faced the real challenge. Could he say no to opportunities that diverted him from the commitment he was eager to nurture? The phone buzzed convincingly on the counter, pulling his attention. Jack felt a tug of urgency mixed with the familiar jolt of anxiety it brought. A message from his boss rolled in. It demanded his attention, proclaiming some urgent updates that required immediate action. The temptation to surrender to work's gravitational pull loomed larger with every tick of the clock. No, he had to choose his family. Forcing himself to breathe, he made a decision. "Let's make a plan today for our scrapbook," he suggested to Emma, hoping to harness her energy into something big. "How about we draft a story about our adventures? I think it would be fun." Her eyes sparkled with delight. "Yes, I want it to be the best one." They concocted ideas, swapping tales of beach days and park picnics, and the laughter flowed seamlessly. In that moment, Jack felt a burgeoning sense of identity that transcended the roles often assigned to him. He was not only a father, but an architect of cherished memories. With each passing minute, the tension around balancing fatherhood and work began to diminish. Perhaps there was room for them to coexist, woven into a new narrative. As they crafted their plans, an idea flickered through Jack. A bold, audacious ambition. What if he could tap into this creative energy during work hours, too? He imagined merging professional deadlines with family-driven passion, finding ways to enrich his work while still being present for Emma. But the thought alone induced familiar discomfort. Would his supervisor understand? Would he risk disapproval? Insecurities bubbled just under the surface, threatening to reshape his aspirations into fleeting fantasies. A newfound flame of ambition ignited. It was time to confront both the challenges of his career and the vibrancy of his personal life head-on. He'd need to strategize. As Emma colored the edges of their scrapbook, a moment of clarity struck him. He would not allow fear to dictate his choices. Instead, he would present his ideas at work, framing them around family engagement, weaving the very essence of their bond into his professional pursuits. Could he shift the paradigm at work while nurturing the connection he cherished so dearly? That question echoed in his mind, catalyzing a storm, one that promised to either deliver momentous change or expose the vulnerabilities he had worked so hard to guard. The stakes were rising and his resolve was being tested. As he plotted his next moves, he caught Emma's laughter filtering through the air, an innocent melody that reminded him just how fragile yet precious this moment was. Would he ultimately have the courage to merge both worlds, to unveil the transformative potential within the looming decisions? The moment of truth drew closer, threatening to shatter the delicate balance he was beginning to establish. Jack felt the suspense weaving itself into his narrative, and he knew he was on the brink of significant change. As the sun climbed higher, casting beams of warmth that filtered through the kitchen window, Jack felt an invigorating spark of clarity. He had spent too long watching life drift by, caught in the whirlwind of his career, while inadvertently neglecting the vibrant moments right before him. Today marked a pivotal junction, the kind that could reshape his existence. The clock ticked, ticking away the comfort of indecision and drawing him closer to action. With Emma fully engaged, surrounded by brightly colored papers and scissors, Jack's determination solidified. Each word he heard from his daughter echoed a new hypothesis he pondered. Could family moments fuel his professional creativity? He envisioned pitching a team-building retreat centered around family dynamics, how they influenced collaboration and problem-solving at work. The thought took root, yet a wave of uncertainty crashed over him. What if the idea was dismissed? What if vulnerability led to ridicule? Jack wrestled internally with the image of a confident leader who embraced risks against the ever-looming fears of failure. The tension in his chest grew tighter. "Daddy, can you help me with this part?" Emma waved a colorful scrap of paper in his direction, needing his guidance. Her call broke his internal wrestle, allowing memories of simpler times to unfurl in his mind. He knelt alongside her, guiding her small hands as they fashioned a bright sun for their scrapbook page. "I've been thinking, what if we made this a story about teamwork?" he proposed, the words tumbling from his mouth. "Like how we help each other, just like in real life." Each minute they spent together seemed to knit them closer, reinforcing his resolve. "Yeah, like how you help me when I can't reach the top shelf," she chirped, her innocent perspective undiluted by doubt. Jack chuckled, a laugh that felt foreign yet liberating. He would harness this simple energy. If Emma could see the importance of allyship, then surely his colleagues could appreciate the value of integrating personal connections into their professional realms. That evening, after tucking Emma into bed and kissing her forehead, Jack sat down at his laptop, the screen illuminating his face like a beacon in the dark. He began typing, allowing his ambitions and aspirations to converge on the page. The message was clear. Work and family were not opposing forces but complementary ones that, when blended, could create a richer experience for everyone involved. His proposal took shape, driven by the embedded love of fatherhood. He sketched out plans for an interactive workshop where employees could explore their stories, share their challenges, and discuss the way families shape their work ethic. He understood the balance he sought to achieve was not merely personal. It was professional, as interwoven effectively as he wished to connect to Emma. But as he crafted his vision, a familiar voice of doubt crept in. Would management see merit in a family-first approach? Was he stepping into dangerous territory? The anxiety prickled at the back of his mind, raising questions about acceptance and the inherent political landscape of corporate life. Bringing personal narratives into a workplace dominated by hard data felt perilous. Yet the more he wrote, the more persuasive his argument became. Perhaps the progression from an isolated corporate entity to a community focused on mutual support and family dynamics was exactly what the company needed. And he could be the advocate for that change. With a deep breath, he saved the document, the small thud of closure filling his chest with an emotional cocktail of exhilaration and fear. This was not merely about a job anymore. It was about redefining his role in the culture of the workplace while empowering himself. As he prepared for bed, the thought lingered. Could he let go of the need for constant validation from his superiors? Could he embrace the shift he envisioned? The moment he realized this was just as much about personal integrity, about aligning his work values with those of a modern father, struck a chord deeper than he had anticipated. Tomorrow loomed as a day of reckoning. The proposal would fly or crash, altering the very fabric of his daily life. Jack understood that the decision he faced was not just an initiative. It was a test of his character. Would he step onto the precipice of change and risk all he knew for the possibility of something greater? As the darkness hugged the edges of the room, he whispered to himself, "The time had come to face my fears." Would courage propel him into a future filled with potential, or anchor him to the familiar but unfulfilling past? The answers hung tantalizingly close, yet out of reach, waiting for his next move. As dawn broke, casting muted light into Jack's bedroom, a storm of anticipation brewed within him. Today wasn't just a routine workday. It was a moment that had the potential to redefine his world. The proposal he'd crafted felt like an open window to fresh air, but at the same time, it flared up insecurities he thought he had buried. His morning routine felt heavier, each action punctuated by the weight of impending decisions. Coffee brewed, the aroma wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. Yet every sip sparked another trepidation. What would his boss say? Would colleagues scoff or show interest? Jack grappled with the insecurities as he dressed, his reflection in the mirror presenting a man haunted by an inner conflict. Arriving at work, the familiar sterile atmosphere bore down on him, filled with the sounds of phones ringing and keyboards tapping. Though the office was bustling, Jack had never felt so isolated. He passed by co-workers, exchanging half-hearted greetings, but their eyes seemed preoccupied, swirling within their own personal storms. He took a seat at his desk and opened his laptop, staring at the document that held the promise of change. The cursor blinked at him, teasing, echoing the rhythm of his racing heart. Doubts flooded his mind. What if this endeavor stripped away the safe boundaries of his role? He'd always been the reliable employee, the one with no blemishes, but, until now, he had never risked being perceived as vulnerable. After a few moments, he mustered courage, deciding to take the bold step of discussing his idea with his closest colleague, Mia. Known for her keen insights and supportive nature, she could lend the perspective he needed. As he approached her cubicle, Jack rehearsed the pitch in his mind, each word balanced precariously on the scale of fear versus hope. "Hey, Mia," he initiated, leaning against the partition. "Can I bounce an idea off you?" "Sure." "What's up?" she replied, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Jack laid out the essence of his proposal. As he spoke, he felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Each sentence spilled forth with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. Mia listened intently, nodding occasionally, yet Jack couldn't decipher her expressions. When he finished, silence settled. Jack's heart raced while he awaited her response, every second stretching like a taut string. Finally, she leaned back, a thoughtful look gracing her features. "Jack, this is a really interesting approach," she stated cautiously. Jack's heart surged with hope. "You think so?" "I do. But—" Mia paused. "You know how the higher-ups can be. They typically favor hard data and traditional metrics. This feels different." Her hesitation brought back the lurking shadow of doubt. What if she was right? What if he was fighting a losing battle? "Maybe I could get a few employees to help me validate this idea with some data," he suggested, unsure if he was addressing his fears or hers. "Or," she countered, "consider making it part of a broader strategy. Show how it can actually enhance productivity or retention rates. You know they only respond to numbers. Maybe you should think of a metric to measure its effectiveness. That suggestion ignited a new flame of determination within him. Jack left their conversation feeling empowered, fueled with a strategy. If he could link his proposal to quantitative benefits, he could create a compelling case that even the skeptics would find difficult to dismiss. Throughout the day, he framed his thoughts and began drafting an outline that integrated Mia's insights. Each keystroke dripped with purpose, and his confidence gradually rose, paralleling the evolving ideas on the digital page. The walls of uncertainty that had encircled him began to dissolve, replaced with a burgeoning sense of ownership over his narrative. Yet, as he finalized the draft and rehearsed it for the umpteenth time in his mind, a new fear crept in. What if the management actually liked it? Could he handle the scrutiny that would follow? Suddenly, the stakes felt higher than he had anticipated. Would he truly want to bear the weight of this innovative shift? Or would he prefer to retreat back into mundanity that offered comfort? Jack closed his eyes, realizing the day was drawing closer to the meeting. He had stepped towards transformation, but could he sustain this momentum? Especially when the very act of change often invited backlash. The walls of his paved professional path were trembling, and now he needed to decide. Would he stand firm or retract? As the clock inched forward, the gravity of his impending presentation weighed heavily. The moment approached, and Jack knew that his decision was not just about a proposal, but about carving out a new identity in his workplace. Inhaling sharply, he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." What lay ahead could either elevate him or reveal the shoes he wasn't ready to wear, and time was slipping away. Would he emerge as the leader he aspired to be? Or would he shrink back into the shadows? Jack stood outside the conference room, the door looming like an executioner's axe. He adjusted his tie and tried to swallow the knot in his throat. Today was the culmination of everything he'd been striving for, the intersection of his personal and professional lives. He could feel the weight of expectations bearing down on him, the urgency of his commitments merging into one singular moment that could alter the trajectory of not only his career, but his relationship with Emma as well. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, summoning every ounce of courage. The room was filled with faces both familiar and intimidating, perched over laptops and pads, ready to judge what he had to offer. As he stepped up to the front, Jack shared a glance with Mia, who gave him an encouraging nod from her seat. It fueled him, igniting a spark of confidence in what could have been a stage of judgment. He began to present, keeping his focus on their shared human experience rather than the data-heavy swing that typically captivated his audience. Jack spoke passionately about how fostering family dynamics could correlate with deeper engagement and productivity at work. His words were measured yet earnest, each point building on the foundations of purpose he recognized as crucial in both work and home life. As he articulated his ideas, Jack observed the shifting expressions across the room. Curiosity piqued, brows furrowed in concentration, and more importantly, he saw nods of agreement. It was a dance, the exchange of thoughts flowing seamlessly while he grounded his initiative around tangible benefits. There was power and comfort in threading his personal narrative into the pitch. It was the very essence of what he had always been missing, the human connection. And then, as if the universe was testing his resolve, a voice rose from the back of the room. "But companies don't run on good feelings. We need numbers, statistics, something concrete. This all sounds nice, but..." The challenge hung thick in the air, the tension palpable. Jack felt his heart race again, the past creeping into focus. Doubt blurred his vision momentarily, but he recalled Emma's laughter, the excitement in her voice when planning their scrapbook, the bond they were rebuilding. He wouldn't let that connection be dismissed. What if the numbers we strive for are a direct reflection of our environments? He countered, his voice steadying. What if we measure engagement not just in productivity, but in fulfillment? Employees who feel supported by their families will work harder, be more creative, and collaborate better. That's value you can't overlook. Murmurs rippled through the room, the atmosphere shifting as the tension unfurled. Other voices chimed in, backing up Jack, sharing their experiences of how family incidents influenced their productivity. The moment took on its own life, transforming into a dialogue instead of a dispute. Jack felt a swell within him, a fusion of fear and exhilaration. And, amidst the back and forth, he realized he was actually leading this conversation elsewhere. He wasn't merely making a pitch, he was fighting for a paradigm shift, both for himself and in recognition of all those hesitant fathers and mothers in the room. Gradually, management's skepticism began to wane, and Jack could see willingness in their eyes. The discussion shifted from worry to possibility. They charted how to make this initiative work, drafting plans on how to implement family-oriented programs that would benefit individual relationships while boosting team morale. Finally, the meeting closed, applause echoing through the air. Jack felt buoyed by the validation, a recognition not only for his ideas but for the father he was striving to be. It was a seismic shift, a harbinger of change he had long hungered for, inside and outside the home. In the days that followed, Jack worked tirelessly to build frameworks around the proposals, collaborating with Mia and other supportive colleagues. He felt renewed purpose drive him, as if every question posed in meetings was a platform for familial importance he now heavily championed. But through this professional shift, Jack committed to his personal promises as well. He prioritized his dad and Emma nights, putting his phone away, stealing moments to watch movies, help with homework, and savor every shared experience over pizza. Every interaction reinforced their reformed bond, illustrating a profound change that even Emma began to recognize. As weeks turned into months, Jack saw his effort bear tangible fruit. An endorsement from management led to a company-wide initiative to embrace family-oriented strategies. Productivity metrics visibly improved. Happier employees engaged more fully and authentically in their work. The moment he walked through the door each evening and caught sight of Emma's smile, reminded him that he had indeed transformed. Not only within the office, but in the very fabric of his identity as a father. He had conquered the loneliness that once enveloped him, proving that love and presence outweighed mere monetary provision. And above all, as Jack sat at their kitchen table, cutting out pictures for another scrapbook project with Emma, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had achieved the balance he had once thought impossible, embodying the father he had always aspired to be. Looking at Emma, he realized he had actualized more than just a professional challenge. He had forged a legacy of connection he would cherish forever. In that moment, with the light streaming through the window illuminating their laughter, Jack proved to himself that the true measure of success was not just in career accolades, but in the love and bond he cultivated as a father. This was Jack's transformation. Now it's your turn to transform your life. You need to subscribe now and never miss the emotional stories ahead. Leave a like now to help spread the word. Your support matters. Comment below with your thoughts. I want to hear how Jack's journey resonates with you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this message.